please be seated? Quorum being present, I call our annual town meeting 2015 to order. Color guard, post the colors. Scout salute.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color guard retreat. Color guard dismissed. Be seated, please. Thank you. That was our Cub Scouts Pack 210, and they meet regularly. They have activities and age-related, and they do wonderful projects in town, and they become Boy Scouts, and some become Eagle Scouts and Star and Life, and they go on to become leaders of our town. And next time we'll deal with the Brownies and the Girl Scouts. If anybody would like to join the Cub Scouts, has a 7 to 11.5-year-old at home, certainly ask at the school, or Deanna McFadden or Kathy Thibodeau, the Scout leader. So thank you. Good evening, fellow citizens of Southampton. I'm Robert Floyd, your town moderator, and I thank you very much for the privilege of being here. It's an honor to serve you. Much appreciated. Thank you. Welcome to our annual town meeting. Warrant return, Town of Southampton. Pursuant to the within warrant, I have notified and warned the inhabitants of the Town of Southampton by posting an attested copy at the Southampton Town Hall and 5 other places designated for the posting of such notices 14 days before holding said meeting. Constable Michael Guyette, date posted May 6, 2015. Posted at Trading Post, Pure Foods, Big Y, County Liquors, and Southampton Beer, Wine, and Liquors. And your director served this warrant by posting up attested copies therein at 6 usual places in said town, and signed by Elizabeth Moulton, David McDougall, Jackie Sears, John Martin, and attested by Michael Guyette, Constable. Oh, quiet. We have the other rooms set up in case there's an overflow, and we had a wonderful custodian of the Norris School hardwire it, solder it, so that anybody who spoke here, everybody would hear in the other room. We have walkie-talkies, which I may not need. Tonight is our second annual town meeting that is recorded for broadcast later on Southampton Community Access Channel 191. A few years ago, when our interim town administrator, Miss Reggie Shea Sullivan, shared her thoughts on recording our town meetings, I was supportive yet cautious. Her meetings with Ms. Kathy Lynch, president of now Easthampton Cable, and continued progress with the arrival of Heather, our current town administrator last year. Momentum was successful to bring us where we are today. Easthampton's cable service has successfully broadened my efforts to guide Southampton to be a more transparent town government. My position on transparency was noted by Easthampton Cable. Last month, they voted with my consent to participate on their board of directors. There is no compensation for this privilege. Neither is there compensation for my serving Southampton as our Cemetery Commission superintendent. Tonight, it is your meeting. You are the legislative body of our town government. You can vote any way your heart and conscience suggest. 2 years ago, we had 544 participants in 2 rooms. What if we had more? What if we continue to have more? I believe whatever best gives town meeting transparency and equal service to the voters. There is a concept in Massachusetts called deputy moderator. Deputy serves with full authority in absence of elected moderator, and when moderator has to step aside, term is only for 1 year. I would like to nominate Carl Keener for deputy moderator. He has been fully briefed and has advised me he is prepared to serve. And he has assisted me this past week, yesterday and today, in setting everything up. All in favor of voting Carl Keener as deputy moderator, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, please signify by saying nay. Unanimous. Mr. Keener? Could you remain standing? Aye. Carl Keener. Solemnly swear to uphold the Mass General laws, town bylaws, and duties of my position. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. My role as our town moderator is simply to facilitate, to provide an open process that you trust, and to administer rules and guidelines in an even-handed manner, not to assure any particular outcome. My responsibility tonight is to be fair and considerate as I possibly can to encourage both sides to be heard. Your responsibility tonight is to exercise your democracy, to question, to debate, to discuss, to comment, to amend, and to table any motion, all in a civilized way. The executive branch of our town government, our select board with cooperation of our finance committee, have finalized the articles on our budget. Their work is done. Our town meetings are conducted in accordance with Mass General laws, our bylaws, and traditional customs and practices we have followed for many years with guidance by the principles and rules of conduct. So I waved the book. In town meeting time, the Moderator's Bible, a handbook of parliamentary law. This is an organic process as our customs, traditions, and practices evolve. Last night I attended the Goshen annual town meeting. It was my pleasure to witness, to learn from town moderator Bob LeBrie conduct his meeting. Nice town, concerned voters, gentle souls. Last May, 3 select board members expressed concern about turning to address me during our meeting. Heather, our town administrator, later offered a suggestion in my follow-up meeting with her to have them and other elected officials sit in the front row facing the stage. I processed this suggestion through the summer, fall, and winter, and have accepted it, putting in practice tonight. Our town bylaw states our meeting goes to 10 o'clock and may continue tomorrow from 7 to 10 and the 2 other evenings after that. I've reserved all those evenings in my calendar for you in case of continuance. When I ask for discussion and you are ready to contribute something new, please walk to the microphone. When it is your turn, please state your name and address clearly. Remember, it is your meeting. You can vote to approve a motion. Procedurally, you can table or vote it down. You can amend a motion. You can amend an amendment to a motion, but you can't amend an amendment to an amendment to a motion. If information available is not present tonight for you to properly assess and analyze information to make a qualified decision, you can vote to continue to a certain time, which would be tomorrow night. Please ask me while you speak to guide you to create your own motion if you're not comfortable with procedures. That is my duty, my elected duty. The plan today is for you to speak no more than 5 minutes on any article except to correct an error. All discussions must be relevant to a motion before us. Please allow everyone an opportunity to be heard before you request to speak a second time on an article. Remarks should be concise, to the point, and not too repetitious. Experience demonstrates well that our minds are rarely changed after the first 5 minutes of a speech. All speakers, please face me and always address me, your town moderator, with your opinions, questions, and answers. This is meant to prevent lecturing, bullying, intimidation, and cross-examination, inadvertently and otherwise. Thank you for your patience and respecting everyone this evening. May I hear a motion for Article 1? All right. Oh, it doesn't work? Sorry, somebody will.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town to vote to hear presentations of the Richard C. Allen Educational Awards sponsored by the Southampton Fire Department and Transfer Station.
Thank you. These are ceremonial, and so I'm not imagining anyone being in opposition, so we'll proceed, please. Thank you.
Randall, we need you.
Imagine what the others would be thinking if they were in the second room.
Good evening, Randall Kemp, Southampton Highway Superintendent and Transfer Station Manager. I'm going to keep it brief, but I'm pleased to be here tonight to award the Richard C. Allen Memorial Scholarship Awards for redundancy. Okay. These awards are given in honor of Mr. Allen, who was a very active public servant. My hope is that any of these young people who may end up living in Southampton after furthering their education will be active in some aspect of town government. So without further ado, first one, Daniel Baldwin. Is he present?
Thank you so much.
Charles Barnowski. Welcome. Kevin Curran. Oh, okay. Oh, laughter. Good idea. Kevin, congratulations. Elizabeth Fleming. Elizabeth Fleming, sorry. Congratulations. Megan Gentile. Congratulations. Vanessa Grober. Matthew Halkett. Jessica Haskins. Congratulations. Allison Helms. Congratulations. Ryan Judd. Samantha Kazunas. Doesn't appear to be here. Michelle Labrie. Congratulations. Meredith Massey. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Thank you. Congratulations. Caitlin Parzik. Kevin Slattery. Congratulations. Savannah Waters. And Claire Williams. So congratulations to all the recipients. I just wanted to add that the money for this scholarship comes from the donations of the residents' cans and bottles to the Southampton transfer station, and so thank you as well. Thank you.
Big hand for everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Randy. A lot of happy faces. For those in the back, there are 12, I counted, there are 12 seats in the second row, and there were 4 seats in the third row, and there's some in 5 and 6, so please come forward. It's too warm to stand. May I hear a motion for Article 2, please?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town to vote to hear presentations of state certificates.
Thank you.
At this point, we'd like to take a moment to recognize 3 residents who have provided superior service in their volunteerism and leadership for the town of Southampton. Through the efforts of the town clerk, we have 3 state senate citations to award. Would the following residents, if present, please come forward? Michael Phelan. No. Edward Colley. John Furman. Thank you, Mr. Phelan. We would just like to thank you for your years of continued dedicated service to the town of Southampton. Thank you again.
Thank you. There's still seats in the second row. I'll sit there if you're not. Have a motion for Article 3, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move change treasurer collector to appointed position FY16. Move the town to vote consistent with the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, Section 1B, to have the elected position of the treasurer collector become an appointed treasurer collector of the town. Such an appointment shall be made by the Board of Selectmen for a term not to exceed 3 years, provided, however, that this vote is contingent upon successful passage of a ballot question pertaining thereto on a town ballot. If approved and the office becomes appointed, any incumbent serving at the time of voter acceptance continues to serve until the remainder of his or her term expires.
Motion made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
This article, similar wording, was presented at a special town meeting, November 29, 05. It failed 44 to 19. It was presented last year and it was tabled. Who would like to speak on this article?
Elizabeth Moulton, 115 Pleasant Street. Mr. Moderator, I'm urging the town of Southampton to adopt a best practice that has been embraced by the Massachusetts Department of Revenue Division of Local Services. Specifically, the Division of Local Services notes in Attachment 3 that among the 198 Massachusetts towns with populations over 5,000, 150 have treasurers and collectors who are appointed rather than elected. In long favoring such a practice, DLS noted that the activities of treasurers and collectors are governed by increasingly complicated state laws, rules, and regulations, and that the scope of the work and the skill sets required have moved beyond the capacity of individuals whose expertise lies elsewhere. We are fortunate to have a highly qualified and experienced treasurer-collector, but not all municipalities have been so lucky. And when those towns had to take action to correct deficiencies, they were prevented from acting decisively because their treasurer-collectors were elected and therefore not subject to direct oversight by the residents and town management. For example, in 2011, the town of Blandford received a highly critical management review from the state that at the time had both an elected treasurer and an elected collector, and was found wanting in a long list of fiscal deficiencies. The state noted that unlike other elected positions, the collector-treasurer is not so much a policy-making position as it is one that requires specific skills, and that by making the position appointed, the town can expand its search for qualified candidates to a much wider pool. Further, the DLS noted that an appointed treasurer-collector fits into the town's management chain of command, allowing for greater oversight and accountability. More recently, in Holyoke, the City Council and the Mayor's office were hampered in their efforts to discipline the city treasurer when it was discovered he was concurrently holding a full-time job in private industry.
It's best to quote your feelings, otherwise it's hearsay, and I've applied that to others, so I've let you
No
go on to
problem.
come. So let's.
For
it's
all
your
the
feelings.
reasons, I have
Thank you.
sponsored a warrant seeking to have the treasurer-collected position become an appointed rather than an elected position, noting, of course, that the current treasurer-collector shall be retained for the balance of her elected term and thereafter may be reappointed. Should the article be approved tonight and the residents of Southampton vote in favor of said article, once a vacancy occurs, the search for a highly qualified candidate can be widespread geographically in order to locate candidates both locally and from other areas who have the specific skill sets that are required for the position. The Select Board would then appoint a screening committee of Southampton residents to carefully screen all the applications, to interview the best qualified candidates, and to vet their references, qualifications, and work experience. The screening committee would then make recommendations to the Select Board regarding the top candidates, which the Select Board may either accept or reject. Once the finalists have been determined, they will appear before the Board of Selectmen to be interviewed in a public meeting at which residents may participate. Thus, the selection process would be open and transparent. It should be stressed that more than 75% of the towns in Massachusetts with populations over 5,000 already have appointed treasurer-collectors. The transition from elected to appointed positions is in keeping with the best practices supported by the State Department of Revenue and is a best practice that should be adopted by the residents of Southampton. For these reasons, I ask that you vote to approve this article.
Thank you, Chairwoman Liz Moulton. Who else would speak on this? We've heard one and for. Any against? Any pro? Is that a hand back there? No, it's not. Okay. Yes. Come right up to the microphone, sir. Anybody who wishes to speak can simply come up to the microphone, get in line even, and I don't need to invite you per se.
Yeah, good evening. George Rancourt, White Loaf Road. I oppose this. I think we should never give up our right to vote. The young lady who's working in this position now is doing a heck of a good job. I think we should go on voting for every one of these positions. If we give up this position, the next one will be what? The clerk? Maybe the assessors? Don't give up your right to vote. There's nothing left in this town except selectmen and these other positions that we vote on. It becomes a position where you can appoint somebody. It becomes a proverbial political football. Let's stay with what we have. That's all we have left. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak on this?
Mr. Moderator, I believe in free elections also.
Well, I do too, but firstly, you have to identify yourself.
Oh, I'm Jim Palermo, Glendale Road, Southampton. This is a best practice that has been endorsed by the Commonwealth Department of Revenue, and it doesn't really deny anybody the ability to vote. What it does is it allows the town to expand its search for qualified people. As the Department of Revenue noted, this position is not a policy position. It is a position that takes a great deal of expertise and specific knowledge that a person must possess in order to perform the job. And expertise gained in other venues is not sufficient for a person to just walk in and take over the job, especially in a town where we don't have huge staffs. There's no office staff that could fill in. Once that person sits down, they have to do the job. So I would urge passage of this.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Mr. Moderator, John Martin, 106 Clark Street. I'd just like to go back in history 2 elections before Donna Whiteley was hired. We had an election where we had 2 people running. One was...
Can everybody hear? You need to, raise it, John, thanks.
How's that?
Ice cream cone.
Okay, John Martin, Clark Street. 2 elections ago, for the treasurer's office, before Donna Whiteley was elected, we had 2 people running. One was an unemployed painter, and one was an office clerk with 6 months' experience. The office clerk won and took the office and did her best, but there's no background, no experience, and we had a lot of issues within town hall with collecting back taxes and the such. So this will allow us to get the best qualified candidate. I like to think of it as if you're running a business and your treasurer leaves, you don't go out to the plant floor and say, who would like to be the treasurer of the company? We're a $15 million company. We need somebody with a lot of experience. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Well, John took my thunder away, but
But you also, as he, need to identify yourself.
I'm Charlie Konecki.
I
I
know,
live
but-
at 146 Valley Road in the town of Southampton.
Thank you.
John took my thunder away. Basically, we are running a business here, and this open election for the best person isn't the way to approach this to run it as a business. So I endorse passing this.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else would like to address this? Seeing none, we'll vote. Some have expressed concerns with voting privately. I'll ask the question. It's up to the town. All those in favor of a yes/no ballot versus raising your hands. Signify by saying aye. Opposed? Signify by saying nay. Can you raise your hands if you want a yes/no ballot? And for those who don't, I'm going to go with the yes/no ballot. You have yellow yes/nos. So what I want you to do, I don't know if it's perforated, I want you to do is fold it in half and carefully rip it. And the counters will be coming by with a box that you can then put your vote, yes or no.
This is if it should go on the ballot? Yeah. Like they vote on it?
Yes or no.
If you're voting yes, you're voting for the motion as read. You're not voting for what might happen, what should happen, what could happen. You're voting for the exact wording of the motion. And for those who are against this motion, then you would put no in the box. That better explanation? So yes to approve this motion, no to defeat it.
And they bring a little box by and stick your vote in the box. And then they have to tally it out. Good God.
You wanted 5 people.
Huh?
You wanted 5 people.
It's ridiculous. Oh,
It's like Channel 40's about the ambulance ships. And I says to the reporter, I says, why aren't you asking me about the public safety council? It's a $10 million proposal.
and you want to know if we're going to add on another shift?
Yeah. And she's like, I didn't even know that was going on. Honey, you didn't know about it? So then I brought her over, had her
Oh, I saw you. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and I explained her what was going on. She's like, no one said anything about this. I know, well, what do you
Really?
want?
Look on our fucking website.
Yeah, we keep it a damn good secret, aren't we?
I know, right? Sorry.
I
Okay.
can't hear you.
Oh, they got a hold of him then?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was talking to him, and he was good with it. So I told him to send Liz something saying they want to put it on the agenda for next week.
Okay.
To vote on. We just have to vote yes or no.
Okay.
Whether they
Okay.
go back on it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's our problem.
All right.
That was easy,
Yeah, right?
you know?
I was asked if I would vote. Moderators only vote on 2 occasions. One is to break a tie. No moderator worth their salt will allow a tie. So a moderator has their own opinion. They can vote to break a tie. Moderator can also vote to create a tie. So if the motion has 1 vote ahead of the nays, the moderator can vote for a tie, thus defeating that motion under the article.
And then what happens to it? If he creates a tie? That's what he just said. He could vote either to break one or to make one. And then what? What do you do when you make a tie? Oh.
And counters, don't forget, there's nobody in the other room. And counters, don't forget to
All
vote.
right.
It's like being in church passing the basket.
He's one step behind you. No?
A lot of times when you're not using it, you shut it off.
Oh.
They'll count and we'll continue. At this time, I present to you, it's your meeting. Many of you have expressed concerns about certain articles that you would like to rearrange and have them brought earlier in the program. And normally, it being a one-night venue. I have disallowed it because we're all going to go home in 3 hours. But since there's a good opportunity, we'll be here again tomorrow. I will entertain a motion to rearrange articles. So if anybody has an intent, please come up forward now.
Mark Thero, 100 Pleasant Street.
Yeah,
Mark Thero, 100 Pleasant Street.
make believe it's an ice cream cone.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to make a motion that we move Article 12 in its entirety to just in place of Article 4.
There's a motion that's made to move Article 12 in its entirety forward. I, as moderator, have always enjoyed the financial omnibus budget to be the first article, and so would you consider moving 11 and 12 forward to be next?
That's acceptable, yes.
I have a motion to move Article 11 and Article 12 to be next. Do I have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We're going to do Article 11, the omnibus budget, next. As moderator, be right back. As moderator, I exercise my right to divide the question, as I have historically done. We will vote on each section of the budget, and when we're all done, we're done. We don't need to vote on all of them together. So the first one will be general government, and that is, turn your handouts and find it. It's right after, it looks like this. The pages are not numbered to my knowledge. I can't hear you. No, they're going to count them. We're going to continue. We've already voted, and as custom, we wait until the tally, so we keep going. That's the way we've done it, and the way we're going to continue to do it. Who would like to speak on the budget? All right, let's make, who would like to make a motion on Article 11? Too many cooks. Somebody read the motion.
Mr. Moderator, I move the
Loud.
omnibus FY16 budget. Move to the town to vote to fix salaries of all elected officials to the fiscal year 2016 for the period of July 1, 2015 to June 30, 2016, and further to raise and appropriate monies as identified in the town's omnibus budget as attached for such fiscal year.
Motion made. Do I hear a second? Who would like to speak on the budget? Heather.
Oh no, this is not going well. Heather Bergerowitz, Town Administrator.
Yes. She has been vetted. She's been here. We've had everybody all in favor. You may have missed that meeting. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. All right. The FY16 budget began in the fall of 2015 after recommendations from the Department of Revenue's Division of Local Services were issued in a report to the town. A finance team was created, which included the town administrator, the accountant, treasurer, assessor, school representative, and a member of the finance committee. Meetings were held bi-weekly to discuss the current budget issues moving forward. All proposed budgets by the department heads were submitted, and meetings were set up with a subset of the finance team. Larger departments had meetings scheduled with the entire finance committee and the town administrator, treasurer, and accountant. Once all information was submitted and requested follow-up questions were answered, the finance team worked on a handful of budgets at a time to determine what was required for each department to function, what each department needed for certification and accreditation, and how to make strategic, fiscally responsible decisions to provide the most services to the town while treating all departments that are equally situated the same. In March and April, the Board of Selectmen met with the Finance Committee to review the submitted budget and answer any questions outstanding by the finance team. As new numbers, Cherry Sheet's local aid, came in from the state and figures in the expenses changed, the budget was modified. Before I begin explaining the revenue, please refer to the attached sheets before Attachment 11 at the end of your packets. This year, for the most part, the budget is level funded from FY15, and revenue predictions are conservative. We believe this to be a sustainable budget and have utilized a few policies for fairness. Level fund, the same amount as given from previous years, in this case FY15. Vacant positions were left unfilled. Hours in town hall equal to 31 for all employees at full-time level. When a position is funded by a grant and when the grant ends, the position ends. And fund to a level where certifications and accreditations can be met and foster fiscal responsibility and financial requirements where possible. Our current balances for some of our funds are free cash, $37,047.36. Stabilization accounts, the operating is $261,534.93. This, if you're looking for this form, this is at, it's the third page in, I believe, right before article, or right before attachment 11, so it says budget facts, I believe. Capital, $223,613.54. In ambulance receipts, reserved for appropriation, $179,021.14. The total funds available that are unencumbered at this point are $390,041.50. Revenue. So this sheet is right after those three sheets you'll see previous to it, and this says attachment 11. The estimated revenue for FY16 is $16,427,544. This includes all cherry sheet numbers, which are local aid, including amounts that simply pass through the budget, such as school choice receiving and the library. This includes water and transfer enterprise funds and revenue articles, such as the WPAT, which is Massachusetts Water Pollution Appropriation Trust? Abatement Trust. I've been trying that one all day. And ambulance receivables. FY16 revenues derive from 4 major sources, which you see laid out in front of you on the revenue sheet. And they're also shown in the pie chart on the sheets previous to that. 65% of our revenue this year is coming from the tax levy. 22% is coming from local aid. 7% is from local receipts, and 6% is from other revenue. Are there any questions on the revenue side of things? Sir, I think you have to come up too. I'm happy.
Yeah, come right up to the mic.
My name is Lawrence Mace, Hillside Meadows Drive, and I just wanted to know where the ambulance receipts fall into that percentage. Is that the 6%?
So on the budget fact sheet, on the actual handout, where it says FY16 revenue sources, it breaks it down under other revenue. So it includes enterprise funds, the WPAT, the acronym I had trouble with, and the ambulance special receipts receivables.
So that,
Yes.
so that number is the fees that they gather that we bill for as the charges for taking care of people who require our services?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions on the revenue before I keep going?
You're good.
Okay. Excellent. All right, expenses. FY16 expenses total $16,427,544. This figure includes the cost of the enterprise funds minus indirect costs, and this includes all pass-throughs, cherry sheet offsets, which are receiving school choice, library, etc. Major changes to this year's expenses include meeting accreditation and state requirements, funding at actual costs, funding for training, funding for cost increases and fixed costs, equalizing departments, restoring previous cuts where appropriate, and creating new account lines to separate costs. Of the FY16 budget, as shown in the pie chart on the handout that says Budget Facts, the top 5 expenses are education at 60%, employee benefits at 10%, public safety at 9%, others, which are the pass-throughs such as the enterprise funds, at 8%, and public works at 5%. The town generally votes on the budget by section. You ready?
Yes.
Awesome. The first section is general government, which includes the administration of town government and costs for maintenance, utilities of the police station currently, and the town hall. This first section can be seen on the first sheet that follows the revenue form in the packet. The total amount of expenses for general government for FY16 is $618,130.81, or 4% of the total FY16 expenses. This amount increased by $59,920.18 from last year. There were many accounts where lines were broken out different from past practice, still maintaining level funding, near level funding for a department. New accounts were created to represent an item, such as Board of Selectmen minutes, and previous lines were divided for the purposes of clarification, such as Larrabee versus Town Hall custodial supplies. Substantial increases were made to the following lines. Whoop.
Whoops.
That one goes. All right, so if you're looking at the expense sheet on the first page, you have, actually I lied, on the second page, thanks Amanda. You have legal expenses, which we increased by $17,500 to put us at $40,000, which is what we've been spending over most of the years. And this is actually broken out a little bit more in an article, I believe it's around Article 5, give or take, that it'll come up again. Election registration wages and election registration expenses both increased this year due to expected additional elections, both on the part of state/federal and also because we likely will have a special election and have been averaging 2 special town meetings a year in addition to the annual. Gas and electric for Town Hall and Larrabee also was shown as increased because we expect them to go up. Town Hall building maintenance expenses, we increased. Technology services and emergency management expenses have also increased. That's all I have on general government if there's any questions.
Thank you. The question was there pages to refer to? There are no page numbers to refer to, so. Oh, there are?
They're on the bottom of the budget.
Oh, okay. It's not an exact page number. It's FY16 budget 1 of 7. So find the FY16 budget. Okay. Anybody want to speak? Any ideas? Communication on? Come right up to the mic.
Elizabeth Moulton, 115 Pleasant Street. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So if you're looking at the packet that you picked up in the back of the room, the top of it will say expenses, fiscal 15 budget versus modified, and on the bottom will say fiscal 16 budget, 2 of 7. If you flip one page over, that's 1 of 7. That will show you general government, and that's what we're talking about. Does everybody have that page now? What did I say? Okay.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's the 14th sheet from the top. Uh, Who would like to speak? Please approach the microphone. And give it a twist to where it needs to be.
Garry Watson, 72A East Street in Southampton. I would like to amend the general government motion to section. I have copies of my amendment, which I will give now to the town clerk and to the chair. I move to amend the FY16 finance team recommendation as follows. 1, delete items. Actually, if anybody wants to follow along here, we've been doing this page number thing. This is page, somebody might help me here. General government, the first page, 1 of 7. If you follow down, you'll see assistant assessor's wages and that sort of thing. That's the area that we're dealing with. If you look to the right, you'll see some strange changes. 1, delete items designated as assistant assessor's wages and admin assistant assessor's wages and insert a new single item designated as assessor department wages, followed by the total budgeted amount of $61,632.54. Number 2, reduce the assessor's expenses to $2,749.46. That essentially gives you a 0 net change, but it creates it corrects a serious problem which the Board of Assessors has relative, to this item. And I'll address this, but first I'd like a second.
The budget item is what, 37,707? And do we agree on that?
We are moving.
No, that's not what we're doing. The question is the figure as it stands, 37,707.
The figure that you have in front of you is 37,707.
Thank you.
You also have a figure of 19,575.
Yeah, we're getting to that.
And we're wishing to combine, this is the Board of Assessors now, not just me, I'm the chairman of the board representing the board, has voted to combine those and make the total amount $61,632.54. That's what we need to run the department. And we're not looking for extra money. We're willing to take it from the expenses column, but we do need to pay our professional. We have some serious cuts we're looking at here, and we cannot run our
Well, I
department
don't know what
that way.
serious means. Have you, when was this voted on? When was this voted on? You said it was voted on.
The Board of Selectmen, I believe, the previous Board of Selectmen, in preparing this warrant, voted upon, all of these. This is their warrant.
I was there, I know that. My question to you is, as the assessors, when did the assessors vote on this change, this proposed amendment?
This afternoon, the Board of Assessors met and voted on this amendment.
I'm not wanting to accept this motion.
You may not.
Well, This, to me, needs to be vetted to Personnel Policies Procedure Board and the Select Board.
I need to call a point of order, Mr. Moderator.
Anytime.
You've said that you've made it very clear, this is the legislative branch of our government.
Yes.
We
and
do
my
not seek.
And my policy has been stated for 10 years not to allow increases without a real extenuating circumstances. And for you to have met only this afternoon and not to have had input from Personnel Policies Procedure Board or the Select Board makes me a little nervous to accept this motion.
Mr. Moderator, I suggest you not be nervous. If you look behind that amendment, you will see a letter which the Board of Assessors wrote to the Board of Selectmen, to which we never got a response. And I would like that letter to be made a part of the record of this meeting.
Not if we don't accept the motion.
I'm just telling you, we bring in over $10 million to the town. You can't spend it if we don't bring it in. We have a great deal of responsibility here, and we can't do it with our hands tied behind our backs. We need to pay our professional. That's it. If you look at this thing, you'll see that there's a substantial reduction in the pay that is allocated to this person. Now, we can't run our department. We can't bring the money into the town that we all need to run our town if we don't have professional personnel to do it for us.
Have you addressed the Personnel Policies Procedure Board and or the Select Board with this?
The answer to that is no, because we only found out recently that we had this problem to deal with.
Then I suggest that we don't allow the motion and that we consider approaching the Personnel Policies Procedure Board and approaching the guidelines of the Select Board.
So you're denying the motion of the Board of Assessors to be able to operate in an efficient and effective manner. Is that correct?
No, sir. I'm disallowing this amendment.
And I'm telling you what the results are of your not allowing this amendment to be voted upon by this body. Why don't you give the people an opportunity?
I've made my ruling. I ask you to sit down. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator,
Identify yourself.
Barbara Laflamme, 20 Cook Road. I would like to address this particular article.
Thank you. There's a lot of turn it like an ice cream cone.
Okay. Barbara Laflamme, 20 Cook Road, Southampton. I would like to address this article, please. I would like to point out in this particular handout on page 1 of 7 that the amount being requested, combining those two numbers, is less than the appropriation for the prior budget year. This is not an unreasonable request. Thank you.
Thank you. Select Chairwoman Liz Moulton.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to note that the reason that that line item is lower than it was last year is because in the past, the Board of Assessors office, the people in that position have been paid for more hours than the building is actually open. So if you remember that when Heather talked about the finances in the beginning, she treated, and the finance team and the Board of Selectmen, all offices in the town hall to be paid for the same number of hours. So the only thing that's decreased in that is that the person in the assessor's office is no longer being paid for hours that the town hall is not open.
Thank you. Newly elected Selectman Charlie Kinnicky.
This newness is going to wear off real fast. Charlie Kinnicky, 146 Valley Road. Mr. Moderator, I plead with you to accept that motion. I look at this as nothing more than designating line items, as long as we're not changing the amount of money. Personnel board can take and evaluate what the pay grades are after the fact.
Thank you. I will concur with the town attorney. Give me a few minutes. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. My ruling stands. I will not accept the amendment. Any other comments on the general expenses? All those in favor of accepting this section indicate by saying aye. Opposed indicate by saying nay. The section passes by majority. Section 2, Public Safety. And this is 3 of 7. Thank you, Heather.
All right, so I'll give everyone give a second to get on the correct page. So this one's 3 of 7, and it's only one page on this one. This is Public Safety. All right. It is page 3 of 7. All right. The next section is Public Safety, which includes the Police Department, Dispatch, Fire, Ambulance Services, and Building Department. The total amount of expenses for Public Safety for FY16 is $1,492,234.20, or 9% of the total FY16 expenses. This amount decreased by $30,915.54. Some changes occurred between lines, breaking out costs, but maintaining level funding. Other changes occurred due to articles on last year's annual town meeting that are not being put onto this year's. So if you refer a couple things, third line down, Police Department wages, this line actually went up by $10,000. If you recall in previous years, and by went up, I meant it went up from the request. I guess I'll back up a second. So in FY15 budget as adjusted, you see it as $601,670. What this came down to is last year, instead of having a cruiser article on the warrant for capital expenses, the police chief had asked if we could transfer, I believe, from operating expenses, the same portion that's generally put aside for the police cruiser towards the wages of the police department to be able to maintain staffing levels. And that was done this year. That was done last year. Once you take that amount out, you were still 10,000 over what he requested this year. And the reason being, years past, what has happened is that there was an article on the budget to transfer the amount of $10,000 for EMT wages for the police department from the ambulance receipts reserved account, or ambulance fees. And after visiting with the auditors this year, we were told we could not do that. They did not feel it was ambulance related. So therefore, because everything essentially goes into one pot for the revenue funds and then gets carried over to the general expenditures in different ways, some by article and some simply by absorption, In this case, we added $10,000 to the police department wages from what they would have had they not had the EMT wages or the cruiser wages equivalent from last year, which puts them at $568,670. So essentially, there's still encouragement for the EMT piece. It just has to come from, theoretically, other revenues to fund it. The next piece is communication wages that changed. You will see that last year they were at $172,946. This year we have budgeted them for $184,000, which is $11,054 difference. The reason this item comes up, it's actually mentioned previously in another article that we have not got to yet. I believe it is Article 6. And the purpose of the communication wage adjustment is the fact that traditionally over the past several years we have been reaching the number of 184,000 roughly each year, being because with dispatch, unlike other departments, we cannot just simply say it's okay if no one comes in today. We have to fill the shift. So this is how we've done it. The police chief has done a great job with it, and at $184,000, that's what we're spending. The next piece that changed is the structural turnout gear. You'll see that it's 0. That was simply a capital item last year that just carried over on the budget. So you will see that that has been reduced. Does anyone have any questions on the public safety piece?
Thank you. Yes, sir. Step right up to the microphone.
Leo Demelbaum, 1 Vicary Lane, Southampton. I see several lines with wages. Maybe I'm not familiar with the term. What are communication wages?
Thank you. We'd like to address that. Heather.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Communication wages are our dispatch wages. So the police officers who are dispatchers, who work over in the police department, they are actually receiving the communication wages. Once upon a time, I believe it was called the communication department. So you see 2 lines on here, communication wages, and the corresponding communication expenses.
Thank you. That answered your question, sir. Great. Any other comments, discussion, questions? We're going to vote then. All those in favor of the public safety section of our budget signify by saying, oh, there is somebody. Who? Bill, just step forward. Your hands kind of blend in sometimes in the back.
Hello, I'm Bill Erickson, 29 Walcott Road. A lot of time was spent talking about adjustments on these columns, but I can't get my eyes off the request from the EMTs of $300,000 compared to an expenditure last year of $180, and they've been budgeted again for $180, which I don't have an opinion on, but I'm kind of curious about where that became resolved and what the difference is.
Thank you, Bill. Heather?
Thank you for the question. So the answer to that is when the proposed budgets came forward, the proposed budget from the fire department came with the second shift for the ambulance service. When you add the second shift, the cost goes up. So the difference between the way things currently are now and adding a staffed second shift over there would increase from $180,232 to $300,232. And I think there was 2 other corresponding line items that were less increased, or smaller increases rather.
Thank you. That answer your question, Ms. Erickson? Good. Yes.
Nancy Carrier, 16 David Street. I got 2 questions.
Yes.
One is, if we okay this budget, what's going to happen to all the other articles?
We're still getting to them.
But won't they affect the budget?
So in years past, as Mr. Moderator pointed out previously, the omnibus budget was often item 1, 2, or 3. This year, the idea was to put the budget further along down the line. It wasn't to torture everybody. Rather, the purpose of doing so was so that we could finish up with our revenue pieces, because a few things are dependent on whether or not the revenue articles are actually passed. You have the WPAT fund, that is $20,401, I believe. You have the ambulance receipts receivable, which I think is somewhere around $75,000. Then you have the Water Enterprise Fund and the Transfer Enterprise Fund, one's 600 and some change, and the other one's 200 and I think 32,000, give or take. So articles like that, if they are not passed, would then affect our revenue source, and then we'd have an unbalanced budget with the expenditures being passed but the revenue not.
Thank you. That answer your question? Thank you. Any other? You have one more.
Yeah, I mean, that's a bad thing, so should we have not done this?
Actually, it sets up a slippery slope for some other articles that would be even perhaps worse, so this wasn't flippant. Thank you.
Okay, my next question is with the building inspector. We've got all these wages here, but as far as I know, we do not have a building inspector, so what happens to all that money that we've allocated?
Thank you.
We have a building commissioner. He initially started, I think, in the fall, Tom Quinlan. He had started and he did not have all of his certifications initially, so he was working under the capacity of a building commissioner over in Easthampton by the name of, I believe, Joe Fidenkovich. Hopefully I didn't pronounce that wrong. Previously, in the past 2 weeks, we have very exciting news. The building commissioner is now the building commissioner. Tom has passed his last exam, so now he is fully the building commissioner. The numbers going back and forth that seem kind of weird on the building commissioner piece. What had happened this year was we actually had to take funds from the salary line and transfer them over to the expense line to be able to pay the gentleman, Joe, who was overseeing as the building commissioner because he was considered more of a 1099 employee and could not be paid out of the salary line. So we had to transfer the funds over. The original pay for the building commissioner and what's currently stated at being is $50,000 with his full accreditation. Before that, he received a reduced rate until such time that he was able to pass the test.
We're good. Thank you. Answer your question? Good. Okay. Anybody else? Seeing none, we're going to vote. All those in favor of the public safety section of the budget, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, please signify by saying nay. The budget, public safety, passes by majority. And item 3, education.
All right, so I think I'm going to go first, and then we're going to have someone who goes second. So the next section is education. The total, so this, you can find this again. It's the next page. It is page budget 4 of 7, and there's additional information on the budget facts sheet. I believe it's around pages 2 and 3 of the budget fact sheet if you want some information and also to see a pie chart. So the next section is education. The total expenses for education for FY16 are $9,839,556, or 60% of the FY16 expenses. Educational costs can be broken down into 3 categories. We have transportation costs, which come out to $300,735. Hampshire Regional School, which is $4,838,133. And the remainder, which is comprised of Norris, School Choice, Charter, and Vocational School, which comes in at $4,700,688. Only the last 2 have to be responsible to net school spending. In the handouts, you'll see that net school spending for Norris, School Choice, Charter, and Vocational is broken out. And it's done so as follows. For Smith Vocational, and actually this year we need to just go with what it's actually written in the budget, which is vocational, and that's $939,058. Charter is $948. School Choice, $54,887. Norris School, $3,692,935. And then you see this interesting thing, indirect, which doesn't match up to anything on the budget because it's not on the budget. It's essentially, I like to consider it a coupon. It's the cost of the services that we pay to contribute to Norris School itself. So these include the portion of insurance to cover the employees at the school. This includes the cost that it would take for a highway superintendent to have the roads on the school, or rather the school grounds themselves, taken care of, and also administrative costs for the town treasurer and the accountant's office to process bills and paperwork. That totals out to $5,452,968, which is what we're required to pay for net school spending this year. Down below, you'll see what Norris requested this year, which is $3,970,143. Again, we're required by net school spending, with all the other allocations being as such, to contribute at least $3,692,935 to Norris. Last year, we had gone back into the town budget, transferred remaining funds from vocational that weren't being utilized by students who decided they weren't going to go, and ended up funding Norris at $3,696,422, which is what we've put in the budget this year. So there'll be level funding from the very end of all the allocations and adjustments at the end of last year. Or I'm sorry, the middle of this fiscal year. Time's getting confusing here. Let's see. So down below, you'll see another, if you're looking on the pie chart page, you'll see it all broken out for you. And I think at this point, John would
Yes.
like to speak.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather. Mr. Moderator, John Fitzpatrick from 17 Miller Ave. I stand before you upon shaking knees to offer an amendment.
You can raise the mic and hold on to it.
No, I don't know that I could do both and talk at the same time. Our motion, and this is an amendment request from the school committee, voted on last week after a month of study in the budget. Our goal has been to provide level services with the available funds from town. Our motion is to amend the education lines within the FY16 financial team recommended column by increasing the elementary school by $40,000 to a total of $3,736,422. That to be offset by a reduction in the vocational tuition line by the same $40,000 to a total of $899,058.
Thank you.
Heather, if you'd like some background, Heather mentioned earlier that last year at the special town meeting, $75,000 of unexpended vocational tuition funds were transferred to Norris School, which allowed us to partially recover from cutbacks that we made going into at this time last year, which was a couple of teachers, 20% of our specials teachers, and we had an uncomfortable year at best. And then halfway through the year, we realized this funding because of vocational students that didn't attend. What we're asking for now is this $40,000 represents 2 vocational students. Our average over the last 5 years has been that 10% of the students that apply don't actually go to vocational school, but we budget at 100% of the request. 5 students represents $100,000. We're asking for $40,000 to be transferred and expecting that some other sum will be transferred at the special town meeting later in the year, but these $40,000 would allow us to stay whole from a level services standpoint. So we hope that the room will accept that.
Thank you. Before I ask for a second, John and I had a lengthy conversation. I met with the town administrator. I met with the town treasurer. Last evening, I was with Craig Jurgensen, superintendent of schools, and this is not an increase in one line item. This is a transfer. So I will accept this motion, and I will ask for a second. Motion made and seconded, and we need a copy for town clerk. I have one. You haven't given yours yet. Anybody have any questions? Come right up. Stay close, John. Yes, sir.
Hello, Barry Sussman, 9 Golden Circle, and perhaps he's not the only one with weak knees, you know, okay. I have a question. On the surface, it sounds like it's a no-brainer. Let's do it. But suppose the full cadre of vocational students goes, and we have to pay that fee. Now, all of a sudden, we're $40,000 short that has to come out of the budget somewhere. Do we then take it from the elementary school? Do we take it from the police or the fire department? What is the contingency plan for such a move if we do that? Clearly, somebody spent a lot of time putting the original budget together, and perhaps it was conservative. They said we have to plan on that full funding for all the vocational students. And I think that was a great idea, and I think we should maintain it, but I would like to understand what the contingency is.
Thank you. John?
Thank you for the question. It's a good one, and we've asked it of ourselves. It's only last year that, in the last year, that we had to come to annual town meeting, and when students didn't go to vocational, that we then needed to transfer it to Norris School because the state told us that we needed to meet minimum net school spending. Southampton is spending, yes, we are spending, according to this budget, above net school spending, $4,000 above net school spending. In years beyond last year, we were 100,000 or hundreds of thousands of dollars above net school spending. So every year vocational tuition was a free cash generator. Now it's one that has to find its way back to Norris so that we can meet net school spending. We agree that there's a bit of a risk to ask for those $40,000 now. We think it will be closer. It may be 80,000, it may be 100,000 total. We're asking 40,000 now so we can maintain level services, not disrupt, which is very close to destruct, because that's what happened last September. The environment in the school, we'd like it to remain whole. We'd like to be able to send the teachers home and the students home and let families know that the school's going to look familiar to them when they come back to it in September. And to be honest, if all of the students go to vocational, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it in September or October. It's still early enough in the year where there's flexibility in the budget that we can make adjustments. It's not like we would be making them in March or April or May when we're close to the end of the budget. And we'll learn that when we learn that, but at least we walk in the door in September feeling whole.
Thank you. That answer your question, Mr. Sussman? Thank you.
Good evening, Michael Rosenberg, 144 East Street, Chairman of the Finance Committee. My question in regards to the budget is what portion for the Norris and Hampshire Regional, is there an amount in there that is for non-contractual raises? We made it a point this year when reviewing departmental budgets to not include raises for non-contractually related employees. So my question is that similar practice being followed with the school departments?
Thank you. John?
I would respond by saying that we're in negotiations and understand and appreciate. In fact, some would say that we offered that it should be a zero increase in those negotiations. I don't believe that any of the negotiations in town have been completed. That's avoidance. To answer your question, yes, there is an increase included in the salary lines. I don't know that we should be negotiating in this ice cream microphone, but it is minimal. And again, when we get to that point, we're full disclosure. We'll talk about what that number is and what we should do with it.
Thank you. That answer your question?
No, it did not. At our original meeting with the Hampshire schools, we requested similar information, and we did not get direction. You say it's a small amount. Is it?
You need to speak right in directly. Face me right into the mic like an ice cream cone so to be heard by the people back there.
Sure. You say it is a small amount. Is it close to $40,000? Is it less than $40,000?
Okay. Would answer that?
Can I just make sure that I have
Sure.
Sorry, I think I misheard your question. Did you say non-contractual or contractual?
I'm concerned with non-contractual
Thank you. The non-contractual races in the budget are in the area of $2,500.
Thank you. That answer your question? Great. Anybody else talk about the amendment?
I think the only thing that needs to be understood, and this was raised by a prior resident pertaining to what the contingency plan is. So it's my understanding, after conferring again with the accountant and the treasurer, that once we hand funds to the elementary school, it's within their purview, and we can't later go back and take it away from them. So the only concern fiscally would be the fact that if we reduce the the vocational tuition line by $40,000, putting it into the elementary, and should the rare occasion happen where the number comes in at $939,000, we'd have to come back to town meeting and figure out where to transfer $40,000 from.
Thank you. John?
Where's the camera, right? Come back to us first. I think that's the only way to answer it, and that would be our expectation, that you'd be looking to us first. So we'll entertain that discussion when we cross that bridge. But in the meantime, we'll have a whole school. I should also mention, and didn't, that if this amendment passes, there is an override request later in the agenda, and if this amendment passes, we'll be reducing that request by the $40,000.
When we hold on, when we do vote on this shortly, and no yelling, call the question. That's rude. If you want to call the question, come forward. But as long as there is hands up, as long as there are people talking, we're going to continue. So any reference to a future article has to be discounted. It may happen, but legally we can't discuss it. We're going to vote on the amendment. Motion to amend education lines within the FY16 financial team recommended budget column by increasing the elementary school line by $40,000 to total $3,736,422 to be offset by a reduction in the vocational tuition line by $40,000 to a total of $899,058. All those in support of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, please signify by saying nay. Nay. The amendment passes by majority. Now we're going to vote on on the education section of the budget as amended. All those in favor of the amended education budget, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, please signify by saying nay. Education section of the budget passes by majority. Section next, Public Works.
All right, we're on page 4 of 7 on the budget piece. The next section is Public Works, which includes highway, cemetery, and tree warden. The total amount of expenses for Public Works for FY16 is $790,703, or 5% of the total FY16 expenses. This amount increased by $8,240. There was an equal exchange of funds from general highway expenses to road machinery expenses, and an increase for street lighting of $7,770. We also budgeted the state required $1 increase in winter roads and winter wages to allow for deficit spending if needed. So if you look at the budget, you have the general highway expenses and the road machinery expenses, and you see that one went down by $12,000 some change and one went up by $12,000 some change. You also see on winter roads and wages and expenses the $1 increase. And down below, the only other change really on this is the tree warden expenses, which actually went up by $470 because the tree warden presented a detailed plan of the exact trees and the cost for each of them to take care of for public safety.
Thank you.
Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway. At several Board of Selectmen meetings, it was discussed about street lighting and reducing that when we were trying to reduce our budget. Yet, on here, it went up by $7,770. when in fact people had given the suggestion of reducing it and it still went up? Why?
Thank you. Who would like to answer that? Vicki or Heather?
When taking into consideration the fact that the utilities have drastically increased over time in order to continue the same service and having the same streetlights in the manner in which we currently have them today, the cost would theoretically go up as a logical increase with all of the other costs of our electricity and gas.
Did I answer your question, Ms. Malonis? You want a follow-up question? Okay. All right. Anybody want to add anything? Anybody else? All right, we're going to vote. All those in favor of the Public Works section of the budget, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, please signify by saying nay. The Public Works section of the budget passes by majority. Next section, Health and Human Services.
All right, this is budget page 5 of 7. The next section is Health and Human Services, which includes the Board of Health, the Council on Aging, and the Veteran Services. The total amount of expenses for this section for FY16 is $109,481, or 1% of the total FY16 expenses. This amount decreased by $6,802.58, which was solely due to the need for funds for a cleanup project that is no longer necessary. That was transferred earlier this year for $7,000. That's what you're seeing represented. If you look at the form itself for Health and Human Services, there's a couple things going on here. First of all, you see that health agent wages has increased in number, and the Board of Health clerical wages has decreased to 0. Purpose being, at the time the budget was formulated, the Board of Health was not sure how they wished to proceed in moving forward, whether they wished to have one health agent, 2 health agents, health agent and a clerical and a part-time health agent, or anything like that. So we believe that it would give them most leniency in making the best decisions for their department by combining the wages into one position. Also, at a finance committee meeting, there was much discussion over what was needed to fund these positions. The numbers we had before us at the time were $24 and some change per hour, which was what the position was rescored at by the Personal Policy Procedure Board, and then split into 2 pieces. One piece being a person who was in the office and doing more of the tasks there under the health agent position for 21 hours a week, and the other piece being the $24 an hour for 10 hours a week. When we calculated the numbers out, it came to the $35,182 that you see proposed there, which if you look from the previous year for FY15, $26,659 some change was the original wages for the health agent, and $6,168 was the original for the clerical. Combining the two was only at $32,000 and some change, so we actually increased the overall piece by $3,000, recognizing the need for the Board of Health to be able to retain services. Board of Health of Expenses was the same for the most part. You move down a little bit further. Any other changes here? We have Council on Aging wages. Previously, we had discussed the fact that if a position is funded by a grant and the grant goes away, the position goes away. So they had, last year, had $22,239 for their budget. They had requested $24,436 to be able to take in the cost of a grant-funded position that was no longer going to be funded by a grant. And as you can see, we did not fund that. We just funded FY15s. But at the same time, we took into consideration the need of the Council on Aging. Last year, they only had $414 in their budget for expenses. In FY14, they were at $1,860, so we restored them to $1,860. Veterans agent salary also went up. This is more of a stipend than a salary, and the gentleman who does this is in the building more than folks who work 20 hours a week, and he gets a stipend for all of his work, whether it's weekends, nights, or what have you. The veterans expenses, when there's purchasing of flags, which we incorporated in on this piece for Memorial Day, the veterans agent actually gets reimbursed 75% of all costs. And for veterans benefits down below, that's based on the families and the individuals who require services. And again, the state later reimburses us 75%.
Thank you. Any comments or discussion on this section? Somebody's coming down the aisle.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Lisa Broder McGann, Caitlin Way, former chair of the Board of Health. Mostly I have a point of clarification regarding the health agent wages and the history behind the increase that is currently in the document, which is page 5 of 7. Essentially, the Board of Health has lost 3 health agents over the past 3 years, and the reason why is because the position was woefully underfunded. As you can see, $26,000 a year for a professional position was not enough for us to keep a qualified health agent. So for more than 5 months, we've been advocating to increase the wages. The process that was used by the Board of Health included the Policy and Procedures Board, and we have a scoring method, and the board went through, I think it's called the PQB or PPB, went through the job description and actually increased the salary recommendation to at least $38,000. As you can see, what is funded here is only $35,000. After the policy procedures, we went to the finance board and also to the special finance, again advocating for the increase in salary. We were never told whether or not it actually would occur or not prior to the article, which is on page 2 of this entire document. It's Article 6. So what the Board of Health did under a resident petition is seek directly from this town meeting that it be funded to the tune of $38,000 a year. So at this time, the board tonight voted to formally waive Article 6. No vote will be required to accept the recommendation at this point as a way of a compromise of $35,000, which is in the document that is before the town at this point. Thank you.
I'm with you until the last half sentence.
So at this point, as I understand, the health agent wages is $35,000, which is appearing on, I believe, page 5 of 7.
Yep, I'm there.
So what we are doing is we are waiving Article 6. No vote will be required because the $35,000 will be accepted as a salary line item from the health agent.
Thank you.
And just final point of clarification, this is not a net increase because as you can see, we lost our clerk, which was essentially a $6,000 a year position. So overall, there's no real increase to that department.
Thank you.
Should I stay for questions?
Any questions? Any more comments, discussion? Seeing none, we're going to vote. All those in favor of the Health and Human Services section as stated, please signify of the budget. Please signify by saying aye. Opposed, please signify by saying nay. The Health and Human Services part of the budget passes by majority. Culture and Recreation, and I'm thinking
This is the bottom
Heather,
of page 5
we
of 7.
maybe condensed it a little bit because we have a lot to do and people are leaving, so less is more.
Culture and Rec includes Library and Historic Commission. The total amount of the expenses for Culture and Rec for FY16 is $146,228.67, or 1% of the total FY16 expenses. This amount increased by $9,684.05 due to funding in historical commissions from prior years going away and increasing the library budget in order to meet state accreditation requirements. Over the past several years, we have not met the state accredited levels required to actually keep the town library accredited. As a result, they had to always continually rely on the hope that they would raise approximately $11,000 from their from their friends of the library. Minimum accreditation requires the town to fund the library this year no lower than $128,501. That would add the initial modification we did actually added original $4,480 from their original level funding just to be able to not have to lose or waive the accreditation, but in order to fully fund them at what they're required to for accredited levels. You see it depicted below under the Culture and Recreation. You have the library wages. We this year broke out expenses and books, utilities, maintenance, and that's it unless there's questions.
Thank you. Any questions, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on the Culture and Recreation portion of the budget. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, please signify by saying nay. Is that a nay? It's a nay. The Culture and Recreation part of the budget passes by majority. Employee benefits.
Mr. Moderator, would it be possible for you to consider either allowing a motion or putting together the debt service principal, debt service interest, intergovernmental expenses, and other amounts to be raised all in one piece?
Yes.
All right, so you have debt service, the debt service interest, the cherry sheet assessments, and the other amounts to be raised. The most notable thing here is down under other amounts to be raised. This is something we're seeing. I think this is the first time we've taken this approach with the expense sheet. Essentially what you're seeing here is things that were on the revenue sheet passing through and coming back out. So school choice special revenue went in under the revenues and it's coming out on expenses because it's not something that stays with us. Same thing with the library special revenue. Then you have the overlay allowance for abatement, which has to do with the Board of Assessors office being able to grant abatements, and that's $70,000. The Water Enterprise Fund went in higher, and so did the Transfer Enterprise Fund. These lower numbers show that what was left in here was the indirect cost. These will be later articles
Thank
to
you.
look at.
So any other comments, questions? So we're going to vote on the remainder of the budget, which includes employee benefits, debt service principal, debt service interest, intergovernmental cherry sheet assessments, other amounts to be raised on tax rate and cherry sheet offsets. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, please signify by saying nay. The rest of the budget as read passes by majority. Article 12. As moderator, I divide the question, and we will vote on each separate item in Article 12. If there are anybody who would like to change the order as they now appear on page 6 of 11.
Art Lawrence, 113 Crooked Ledge Road. Can we get the results of
Oh, yeah.
Article
I
3?
had it right here, and thank you, Arthur. I was waiting until the budget was over. 255 people voted for Article 3. That was the treasurer-collector appoint versus vote voting. Yes, 199, no, 40. The motion under that article passes by majority. Thanks, Art. Anybody want to change the order? Or we'll proceed. Seeing none, we'll proceed. I need a motion for Article 12A.
Mr. Moderator, I move under A, Proposition 2.5, second shift advanced life support, move the town to vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $135,000 to supplement the fire department's advanced life support ambulance service, to add a second shift for fiscal year 2016 contingent upon passage of a Proposition 2.5 so-called override pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21C, referendum question.
Thank you. Who would like, motion made, do we hear a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, who would like to address this? And the Finance Committee recommendations is recommended.
John Workman, Southampton Fire Chief. This is basically gives the town an opportunity to vote for what level fire service they would like for the town. It's a proposal to have add an additional in-station coverage for 7 hours, 7 days a week with 2 individuals. It's a proposal that matches similar towns such as Granby, both in budget and extent of coverage.
Thank you, Chief Workman. Anybody else?
Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway. When we address you, We always give our name and our address. Could you have the fire chief do that?
John Workman, it's 73 Glendale, Easthampton.
Thank you. Anybody else like to comment? You got your hand up? Come on over.
Leo Demerbauer, 1 Vicary Lane, Southampton, is a beneficiary of a very efficient service of the ambulance service. I recommend that we vote the money in. It saves my life.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Mark Thero, 100 Pleasant Street.
You got to really get in there, Mike.
Mark Thero, 100 Pleasant Street. Mr. Moderator, I stand tonight to oppose this measure. It's my feeling that over the last 18 months, the fire department was at the ALS level. Until very recently, they were able to cover both days and the nights being on call. It's my understanding that the Granby Fire Department staffs 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. days, and they're on call at night. This is an unneeded expense. I would say that with better management, the shifts could be covered at night, and that it's just not needed. I think the public has not been educated on all of the facets of this article, and with that being said, I would motion to table Article 12A.
We have a motion to table. Do we have a second? Motion to table demands no discussion. It's a vote to kill the article, to perhaps see it again, but to kill it, table it. Robert's Rules of Order are different from meeting time, so table here means to kill it. So all those, and it's a 2/3. So I'll ask the counters to come forward. It needs a 2/3 vote to be tabled. All those in favor to table the motion A under Article 12, please raise your cards. When just come to the mic and give me the number. Come to the mic and give me the number. No more whispering in moderators' ears. I want everybody to hear this at the same time, for future moderators' sake. Yes.
47.
47.
37.
37.
3.
3. Thank you. And those opposed, please signify by raising your cards.
$34. 40. 13.
The table motion needed 2/3 to pass to kill the motion on the article. Ayes were 84, nays were 87, so the motion to table failed. We will continue discussing Article A. Any more comments, come to the mic.
Charlie Konecki, 146 Valley Road. I'm the liaison designee by the Board of Selectmen to work with the fire department. I've been watching the stats and everything relative to the activity for the ambulance service and see that there is a need to start funding this. This is a normal evolution of the town to move forward. Also, people need to realize that even if this is voted favorably tonight, it's still going to go to a town-wide ballot question.
Yes, thank you. Now we'll explain that before the voting.
Nancy Carrier, 16 David Street. I didn't have the same count as you came up with. Either I didn't hear the numbers right, but I had it tied.
Well, it needs 2/3 to pass. So if it's tied, it fails.
Okay, but at least get the numbers right. That's what I was just checking, because
I had
they
84 to 87.
Yeah, it was 97 and 97. 87, 87. Okay.
Okay?
Got them right.
Okay.
Mike Bueller, 88 High Street. Little information would be helpful, at least for me, to better understand this proposal, which is how concretely would this measure affect the quality of service in town? So, for example, would it reduce response times to emergency calls, or would it increase the number of staff available for the ambulance during this second shift, or would it improve service in some other way?
Okay, Mr. Bueller. Chief?
Very good question. It would increase staff levels in the fire station by 7 hours, 7 days a week. What this allows, nighttime coverage, when there's a call that comes in, there's approximately a 7-minute delay as folks come from their home to respond to the station to get the ambulance or fire truck to respond to a call. With this proposal, it's utilizing part-time staffing that does not have any health care, vacation, or sick time benefits, and it brings them in the fire station able to respond directly when the call comes in. We've done statistics over 13 months. For the 8 to 5 shift, we cover approximately 52% of our calls. For the calls that come in for the proposed second shift, we would cover 82% of the calls that come into the Southampton Fire Department.
Thank you. Mike Bueller, that answer your question? Yes, thank you. Good. Whoops, easy, easy. Pace yourself.
I think I'm going to need the second shift. So when I land on my face. So anyway, how this ended up in the ballot in the first place was in the finance team meetings when we had initially had the budget before us requesting additional costs for the second shift. The conversation had come back up. We had a gentleman visit the finance committee before, and he's been on finance committee. Now he's on the school committee, and you heard from him earlier, John Fitzpatrick. And the idea he suggested and put forth to the financial team was that if there's a new position created or you're looking to add new services, the idea would be to put it to the town to allow them to decide whether or not they wish to pursue these services instead of trying to continually tax an already strained budget by adding in new costs, new services, new employees.
Thank you.
Aaron Kucher, 49 Coleman Road. Can you speak to the second shift? Because when I looked at all the information, it appears that you're adding from 5 to 8 o'clock, which doesn't sound like a second shift to me. So can you clarify?
Thank you.
Currently, our first shift goes from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night. We have a nighttime coverage currently that goes from 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. We have gaps in coverage from 6 a.m. until 8 a.m., and we also have a gap in coverage from 5 p.m. till 6 p.m. The second shift, when brought in the additional 7 hours per day, we would divide our shifts. So the first shift would start at 6 a.m. and extend to 2 p.m. The second shift would go from 2 p.m. till 10 p.m., and that's where 82% of our calls fall.
Thank you, Chief. That satisfy your question, Ms. Kuchar? Great. Anybody else? Seeing none, we're going to vote. And when we vote, it passes or not, the select board can put this up for election. So in order for it to be law, it has to pass at a town meeting tonight and an election. And if it doesn't pass at a town meeting tonight, it passes at an election, then it goes to another town meeting. So it needs 2 wins. All those in favor, I'm going to do a voice vote. All those in favor of Proposition 2.5, second shift advanced life support FY16, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, please signify by saying nay. Counters, please. We're going to do a card vote. I don't trust my ears. All those in favor of Article A, raise your cards and hold them there while they're counted. Some of you yell louder than others, so we can't guess. I tried that my first meeting and didn't work out.
Forty-four.
44.
21. 47.
47. Those against? Oh, sorry. You're good? Those against, please raise your cards.
Thirty-five.
35.
19.
19.
5.
5. The motion, A, under Article 12, passes by a vote of 112 to 59. B, may I have a motion for B?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town to vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $63,000 to meet the costs required to retain the position of 1 police officer, contingent upon the passage of Proposition 2.5, so-called override, pursuant to a Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21C referendum question.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, and the Finance Committee recommended. Who would like to address this motion? You still here?
I'm still here, yes. They don't let me go home until we're done. All right, so there's an attachment in your packet. It's called Attachment 12B, Prop 2.5 Override for Replacement of Police Officer New Hire. The numbers are consecutive, so it will be right after the budget piece. And this is essentially a breakdown that the Board of Selectmen had asked the police chief for, and he was able to comply and get this to us in a timely manner. And this breaks down all the different pieces. Again, going back to the notion that was presented to us from John Fitzpatrick, if you're going to hire a new employee or add staff, then the suggestion would be to go to the town for Prop 2.5 for support and approval if that's a position they felt they needed. In this case, it's a little bit different. This is to replace an officer who is left. And at this point, we unlikely would be able to replace them with level funded wages. Even with the additional $10,000 you had seen earlier, it's still not going to be enough. So this is a breakdown of what it would cost if we went to the people and said, we would like to hire a new police officer. You have the salary broken out by the baseline. There's different pieces here based on contractual stipulations. You have the academy line for $2,500. The cost for a medical exam, physical ability test, uniforms and equipment, police uniforms, psychological evaluation, and we also added the employee benefits piece at $13,000 for the health insurance and retirement, for the purposes that folks know that the true cost of having a police officer, at least initial start-off police officer, is $63,010.
Thank you. And anybody else who would like to make any points, discuss, come forward, stay in the line.
Margie Strikers, Bloomer Road.
You're going to get a little closer to your microphone.
Margie Strikers on Bloomer Road. Seeing we're going to have a special town vote anyway on this 2.5 stuff, can we just do
You need both. In other words, it has to pass at a town meeting.
Well, could we hurry this along so we can get to the one that everybody's waiting for? Or you're dragging it out till...
I gave everybody an opportunity to change the order, and nobody came forward.
Well, we want to get to number 12.
Nobody
so.
came forward, so...
I would just like to say to everybody, this is not final, what you do on the next two. We don't need a lot of discussion on it.
All right,
because we're going to get a chance to vote. The whole town will get a chance to vote.
Thank you. Yes, sir. That was great. Good save. Thank you, Mr. Garry Swanson.
Garry Swanson, 72A East Street. I have a question of the Board of Selectmen, and that is, when you put the ballot together, is this all going to be one question, or are these individual items going to be separate votes, i.e., can I go pick up, say, a 10-cent police officer and not want a 18-cent school?
Thank you. Good question. I know the answer, but I'm going to let Heather.
Thanks, Gary. Mr. Moderator, I'm going to respond to that question on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, and the answer to it is that these questions will go on independently and individually as separate items. So it's like you're going to a grocery store and buying the milk, the eggs, but I'm not getting the potatoes.
And
so
they have to be the same words as in...
They're not going to be the exact same words you see here, and the reason being, and this was the issue folks came up with last year as well for the override, is we are required to follow the stipulations as put out for us from Department of Revenue in their guide for the Prop 2.5 questions. So we have to have our ballot questions mirrored their language. It actually goes before our town council before it goes on the ballot, and also goes before the State Department of Elections to make sure, and DOR, to make sure we're complying with the regulations to pass a Prop 2.5.
Okay, and stay with me. Town meeting appropriates funds. The select board puts the language, puts the article on the ballot, but they don't have to put it on the ballot. They have the right to put it on the ballot.
Correct.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, Ron Peralt, Glendale Road. The $63,000 of additional appropriation for another police officer to replace one that left, what happened to his salary?
Good question. Who would like to answer that? May as well stay there, Heather.
Thank you for the question. So the answer to this comes down to, if you remember, every year costs go up. Currently there's a contract in play for the police department that allows for certain things, including until such time that we settle on a new contract, a 2% increase for each of the each of the individuals who are there. That, along with other benefits that come in the contract, increase the cost in the wage line, and it makes it harder to maintain a person when last year you were paying two people $10 each. This year you have to pay each of them $12 contractually. That's $24, but you will level fund it at $20.
Thank you. That answers your question, sir. No? How much is... Oh, thanks, Amanda.
Amanda Kemp, former road member of the Finance Committee. In addition to the expenses that have increased in the police department, last year the police department also received the $33,000 allocation from the stabilization as voted at town meeting, and that is not on a part of his budget because that was a separate item last year. So that immediately gets taken off of their wage line.
Thank you, Amanda. That better? No? Motion, well, you have to come up here.
Nancy Carrier, 16 David Street. I'd like to make a motion to table this Article B.
Reason?
Because there's still not explanation enough and to move things along. Because there's not explanation enough and move things along.
We have a motion to table. Do we have a second? Motion made and seconded, then we vote. I'll take a voice vote. All those in favor of tabling signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. I'm going to call it the motion to table failed. So we're going to vote on B. If you have a question, no need to raise your hand as in other years. Come right up to the mic without me even addressing you, Mr. Sussman. And you don't have to run. Don't please. You're gonna take that tripod down, and Mrs. Ahart's gonna be upset at me, and I'm gonna blame you.
No, I thank you, and in the spirit of humor, then let me say, I love the police.
Oh yeah, you got it real close. You got to go.
In the spirit of continuing the humor, let me say I love the police after I've checked my speedometer. Okay, all right, okay. No, I really do. They got a tough job, but I really want to just make a comment. It's not really a question.
Okay.
I was at a meeting here years ago, maybe 8 years ago, and the Finance Committee was talking about a recommendation to add an additional officer to the police force. It came before this meeting. I do not know who put it on the ballot, but it did get support. But the Finance Committee did not endorse it. They specifically instructed the town that they were against it because there would come a day when there wouldn't be enough money to fund it, and that person would be eliminated.
They're recommending it now.
Yes, they're recommending it now, but I'm just mentioning that this is an opportunity to take advantage of that in a painless way. There is no individual to let go. That individual is already off the staff, and so it is a painless way to keep the budget level.
Thank you. We have
Hello, Mr. Moderator. I'm Jennifer Roberge, 134 Brickyard Road. I'm just curious if the police chief or someone could come up and let us know what is the coverage now of the police department. Are we covered during the day and night? How many positions? You know, like, is it adequate coverage or inadequate? That sort of thing.
Chief Silvernail? No, I'm in eye contact with him. I got it covered. Chief.
What was the question?
Chief Silvernail, we had a question on what is the coverage in regarding B. What is the present coverage? I'm reiterating what somebody asked. What's the police coverage that we have in town?
Right now, we have typically 2 officers on duty around the clock. The loss of this position is going to result in our inability to have 2 officers on all the time, to guarantee that. We'll then have some shifts that are only going to have 1 officer on. When that happens, that officer who's on duty by themselves, male or female officer, is going to go to domestics, go to whatever disturbance call by themselves until we can get someone in for backup. that officer by themselves is going to be in jeopardy trying to handle a domestic or make an arrest until someone else can get there. It's also unsafe for the public. One officer cannot handle, make an arrest, trying to calm down the situation, even if it's at an accident. One officer can't cut it, trying to render first aid. Typically the officers are the first ones on the scene. One officer's not going to be able to render first aid, make the scene safe, direct traffic, investigate the accident. You know, I don't know of any other town around that's our size that doesn't have 2 officers on duty at all times.
Thank you, Chief. That answer your question? Thank you. Question answered. Any other comments?
Jessica McConnell, 24 High Street. It is very easy to see where this money got absorbed into the budget. And if if you're lucky enough to get a raise every year, you notice right away that your insurance went up, your food expenses went up, your electricity went up, everything goes up, and it absorbs your raise very easily. So this $63,000 is not additional money. It really, that is the increase to do this. And she included everything, including training, including health insurance, including all of those benefits. So this is not a $63 salary that's handed to somebody. This is everything that comprises having a police officer. I do not think this is an unacceptable expense.
Thank you. I wish we could send the mic to you, you know, just like a little drone. Next year's budget. Shouldn't say that.
Susan Sussman, 9 Golden Circle. I do want to remind everybody that these Prop 2.5s, this one that we're talking about, is real money out of pocket. Out of pocket, my pocket, everybody else's pocket, because our taxes will go up. So it doesn't just get absorbed.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Just a reminder on this piece, there's notes on each of these articles, and this one I think is very important to read as well. I'll skip to the middle piece of it, where it says, this article carries with it an approximate 10 cents per thousand increase in the tax rate and would remain as a permanent increase. But note that it's 10 cents. There's actually a sheet later on in the packet, I believe it's attachment 12, that breaks down each of these costs and their effect on the tax rate individually and then as a whole.
Thank you. Yes, sir. I love your passion.
Leo Demelbauer again, 1 Vicary Lane, Southampton. Ladies and gentlemen, we speak here on dollars like life in value has no meaning. If you have a problem with a fire and the fire engines come late, the police cannot handle emergencies. I think $100 or $200 a year is affordable, because if you lose a life or a loved one, you have lost more than $200.
Thank you. We're going to vote. All those in favor of Proposition 2.5 B under Article 12, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please signify by saying nay. This B under Article 12 passes by majority. Section C of 12, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town to vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $120,000 to supplement the elementary school budget in order to maintain classroom teaching positions that will otherwise be eliminated, thereby increasing class size and jeopardizing continued services to students, contingent upon the passage of a Proposition 2.5 so-called override pursuant to a Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21C referendum question.
Thank you. Motion made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Who would like to speak on this?
Mr. Moderator, this, as I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the vocational transfer, the school committee would like to offer an amendment.
Thank you.
And I think the clerk, you have the language as well. This would be under the title of if the vocational transfer amendment passes. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money not to exceed $80,000 to supplement the elementary school budget to restore a classroom teaching position, including benefits and retirement, that was eliminated last year, contingent upon passage of a Proposition 2.5 so-called override pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, 21C, referendum question, or to take any action related thereto.
We have an amendment to change the dollar figure. Do we have a?
Mr. Moderator, just one comment. I was reminded by our town council, it has to be a sum certain. So it can't say not to exceed $80,000, but it can say
Thank you.
$80,000 exact.
Make it 80.
Thank you. Yes, I'll amend the amendment to remove the words not to exceed. You can just
Okay.
strike the words not to exceed.
Okay. So we have an amendment to a motion. Do we have a second? Motion made and seconded. We're changing the amount from 120,000 to 80,000. Any discussion? Thank you, Michelle.
Patty Mari, 205 Pomeroy Meadow Road, and also the library teacher here at Norris.
You got a little louder because we have competition on the roof.
Okay, though we are meeting minimum net school spending, we're meeting it on the lower level, and out of all the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, Southampton ranks the second lowest in per pupil expenditures. So that means that the amount of money we spend each year to educate each child we're second from the lowest in the whole state. And that came from the DOE website. So this is a surprising statistic considering that many of us, myself included, and many of my friends moved here for the great school. The school is perhaps one of the greatest, if not the greatest, asset to this town. Aside from the fine education that students receive here, the school is the largest gathering place for sports, fundraisers, town meetings, even police trainings, and yet each year the financial picture here gets bleaker and bleaker. No one wants their taxes to go up. I don't want mine to go up. Yet we're sitting in a building where we cannot even afford to refill the hand sanitizer machines that were installed, and where teachers spend their own money on paper, pencils, cleaning supplies, and ink for the printers. Our children are a valuable asset, and investing in them is a priority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica McConnell, 24 High Street. I have to say, since I found out about net school spending, it has bothered me more than you can possibly imagine that my elementary school students compete with Smith Vocational for our dollars. I don't understand why the state does that. I would think that the Voc would have to compete with the high school for that money, but instead they compete with our elementary school children. And I've watched year after year has their classes, my daughter's class has increased in size. She's one of the classes that got cut last year. And there is nothing left to cut. We need to take care of our elementary school children. You cannot spend all of your money on their higher education, because by the time they get there, if you haven't spent on their elementary education, they're going to be behind. We have to produce decent elementary school students in order to then further their education.
Thank you. Going to vote on the amendment. Then we need to vote on the motion under the article. All those in favor of the amendment to change the amount from $120,000 to $80,000, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, please signify by saying nay. The amendment passes unanimously. Now, we are going to vote on the motion under 12C. All those in favor of the amended motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, please signify by saying nay. The motion under Article C of 12 passes by majority. D.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town to vote to appropriate the sum of $198,875 to pay the cost of purchasing a fuel station and generator for the Highway Department, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the selectmen, is authorized to borrow the said amount under and pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 79 of General Laws, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town thereof, provided, however, that no sum shall be borrowed or expended hereunder unless and until the town shall have voted to exclude the amounts required to repay any such borrowing from the limitation on total property taxes set forth in Chapter 59, Section 21C of the General Laws, Proposition 2.5.
Thank you, Selectwoman Jacqueline Sears. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Finance Committee recommendations. It's recommended. Who would like to, this requires a 2/3 vote because this is a debt override. It's not a 2.5 proposition override.
Margaret Larson, 9 David Street, and I'm also representing the Capital Improvement Committee. This article has been placed on the warrant by the Capital Improvement Committee. This article will allow for the replacement of the current underground storage tanks that cannot be utilized due to a crack in the tank, to be replaced with above-ground storage tanks, once again allowing the town to have its own fuel station and backup power to run said station. This article carries with it an approximate 4 cents per thousand increase in the tax rate for 10 years.
Thank you. Any other discussion, comments? We have somebody from the back coming down.
Dan Pellegrini, Crooked Ledge Road. I just want to remind everyone we cannot pass everything. So at some point we need to start becoming fiscally responsible and not continuously increase taxes. So, you know, we all were in vote with the fire department, the police department, the school. We've got to draw lines. We've got to make hard decisions like we do when we run households. So I just want to remind everyone we cannot approve everything here.
Thank you. Anybody else? We have somebody behind you.
I'm so sorry, go ahead.
I don't like this. Judy Keener, County Road. I see that we're addressing adding new tanks due to being unable to use existing tanks that have a crack. Are we going to address the tanks that have a problem? It's separate and apart from this, but it seems like we should be addressing that problem before we address this one.
Meaning, why did the tank that we have
I'm not
crack-
sure. Does this include addressing the tanks that are existing that we can't use?
Right, I think it's just replacing Randall Kemp, our highway superintendent. You remember him from a long time ago, earlier in the evening?
Randall Kemp, Fulmer Road. The costs, this cost includes removal of the old tanks.
We need to go right into the mic so we can all hear in the back.
The cost includes removal of the old tanks.
Okay. Did that answer your question? Where'd you go? Ms. Keener? Did that answer your question? I think the question, Randall, was maybe why it cracked, or do we mend cracked tanks?
Why do they crack? The underground storage tanks have a life expectancy of 30 years. They're 28 years old.
Yes.
Jessica McConnell, 24 High Street. Last year, the tanks were dug up and some work was done. Is that when they found the cracks?
They found the cracks soon after that. There were
You gotta
piping.
Randall, everybody keeps turning. Yeah, right here. We're good.
I'm addressing people behind
You're
me. It's
addressing
very
me.
uncomfortable.
You're addressing me.
Last year, we had piping upgrades mandated by the state, and after they were completed, they're double-walled tanks, and the interstitial alarm indicated that there was gasoline in the interstitial space. Pressure tests concluded that there is a crack on the inner tank, so there's not gasoline going into the ground, but it's unable to be used because of the inner tank.
Thank you.
Does that answer the question?
We'll find out.
Judy Keener, County Road.
I felt
Then
that all
I-
the way up here.
Then I guess my question would be, with this $190,000, are we under mandate of some kind of time frame to start addressing the possible problem, I guess?
The possible problem with the existing tank?
Yes.
Okay. We'll have that question answered.
The gasoline tank is the one that's affected. The diesel tank is still in use. The gasoline tank, I would have to review the DEP regulations, but it may have to come out of the ground in a time frame.
It may have to come on a ground time frame. That's
In a time, yes,
Okay.
it may have to be
May.
removed in a
Okay.
specific amount of time.
Thank you.
Chad Fink, Coleman Road. My question is here that it says one tank is cracked and the amount requested is to replace tanks. Now, are we replacing the ones that aren't cracked or just the one that is cracked? And if it's cracked, has anybody looked into the cost of repairing that crack? That's something that can be easily welded. I do that for a living.
We have a question. Randall Kemp will answer.
A couple questions there. Number one, why are we replacing both tanks? They're two 4,000-gallon tanks, double-walled, with a 30-year lifespan, and they are both the same age. So it doesn't make sense to replace one and then have the other one have a problem with the other one after you've already done all the work. The
Thank
second
you.
part of the question was
It-
welding. I
welded.
don't believe they can be welded.
Okay.
Because they're double-walled.
Thank you. Next.
Kevin Keener, 166 County Road. Pardon me, the pollen's got my voice. Has there been any looking into possible soil contamination, or if there's any contamination around a quote-unquote cracked tank?
Okay. He mentioned earlier, I don't know if you heard him, that he did not detect any leakage into the ground because of that. How am I doing, Randall? Because of that second wall.
Dan Pellegrini, Crooked Ledge. What happens if we don't do this? Do they just go buy gas at the Citco and pay an extra 2 cents a gallon? So what are we really talking about here? Are we increasing our cost from going to the gas station, increasing the town cost on gas $2,000 a year, but yet we're going to kick up $200,000 to go put 2 new tanks in there? Are we looking at this economically? What makes sense?
Thank you.
I would frame it as an insurance policy. Dan's correct. We do buy it at the gas station. The problem comes when you have a storm like we did in October of 2010, where the gas station was out. We were out of power in town for a week. And what do you do for fuel then? If the highway department didn't have fuel at that time, we wouldn't have been able to mobilize to get the roads cleared.
Thank you. Did that answer your question, Mr. Pellegrino?
Nancy Carrier,
I don't have specific numbers in front of me, but when you have a tank of that size, you can do things when the price of fuel goes down, you can buy at that time and try and save money there.
Thank you.
Nancy Carrier, 16 David Street. If we do those tanks, then I'm assuming that the budget that the police department and the fire department already have for expenses, they would then end up getting changed because of the tanks now being right there at the station. So there must be an adjustment somewhere down the road for
Randall?
that.
I don't have concrete numbers, but I don't think the cost savings is all that significant.
Then why spend the 200,000?
As I stated before, it's an insurance policy for what happens in a disaster. How do you mobilize vehicles?
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, we're going to vote. Oh, sorry. Let's see your hand, John.
John Martin, Clark Street. I think the point we're missing. Sorry, John Martin, Clark Street. I think the point we're missing is one of the inner tanks has already cracked. So it's leaking out to the outer tank. That outer tank cracks, it leaks out to the ground. The diesel tank cracks, it leaks out to the ground. Environmentally, we clean it up now and get it done with before we have $1 million issue later on.
Thank you, John.
Rick Spath, 76 Line Street. If you don't want a disaster, pump it out now, and you won't have anything to leak out.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Teague Baker, 220 Brickyard Road. I'd just like to address the public. The tanks are pulled. There will be samples taken to see if there is any contamination, okay? If there's contamination found, there's possibilities, and correct me if I'm wrong, Randall, 21J may or may not cover municipalities. Not sure. It's something that we can look into. So for cost for cleanup, if there was an issue, may be covered under 21J, which we pay for in our fuel taxes. So whether or not we replace the tanks or not, the tanks do have to come out at some time. And I believe the, correct me if I'm wrong again, Randall, the deadline for the tanks might be of August of 2016, but that has to be fact checked. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He thought I didn't see you. Sometimes I don't.
I just want to clarify that there's a little bit of gasoline in the bottom of the tank right now, but the tank's been out of use. So it's not like it's a full tank waiting, ticking time bomb, but it will still need to be removed, especially if there's a DEP timeline. But I don't want the perception that there's a tank full of gas sitting in the ground.
Understood. Thank you. Yes. That's what he meant.
Carl Keener, 168 County Road. As far as tank removal and what have you is concerned.
Address to me.
As far as tank removal and what have you is concerned, I did this for over 40 years. The regulation says that if a tank is taken out of service, it has to be removed within a year.
Okay.
So if
Thank
that
you.
gives you information in that regard.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, nobody at the mic, we're going to vote. This requires a 2/3 vote, so I'm going to ask, I would take a voice vote first. All those in favor of D, the debt exclusion for the tank, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, signify by saying nay. We need a count. With all those in favor, raise your cards, please.
56.
52.
21, 56, 52. All those opposed, please raise your cards.
Seven.
7.
2.
'Motion under D passes. It meets the 2/3 requirement by 129 to 16. We'll move on to E. A motion, please.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town to vote to appropriate the sum.
Sorry, a new selectwoman,
Hello?
newly elected
It's
Shannon
on.
Cutler.
Ready? Mr. Moderator, I move the town to vote to appropriate the sum of $10,800,000 to pay the costs. 800. What did I say? $8. Oh, good golly. $10,800,000 to pay the costs of designing, constructing, originally equipping, and furnishing a new public safety complex, including the payment of all costs, incidentals, and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the selectmen, is authorized to borrow said amount under the pursuit to Chapter 44, Section 7.3 of the general laws, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to the issue bonds or notes of the town, therefore provided, however, that no sums shall be borrowed or expended hereunder unless and until the town shall be voted to exclude the amounts required to repay any such borrowing from the limitation on total property taxes set forth in Chapter 59, Section 21C of the General Laws, Proposition 2.5.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Finance Committee recommendations. Finance Committee recommends this article as long as disclosure of future operating cost of the new facility is made to voters when considering this article. Who would like to speak on this article? Yes.
Margaret Larson, 9 David Street. This article has been placed on the warrant by the Capital Improvement Committee. If this article, along with a ballot question at a town meeting passes, the tax rate will increase by approximately $1 beginning in FY17. In FY16, the Hampshire Regional Department, Norris School Roof Department, the Hampshire Regional Debt, Norris School Roof Debt, and interest for public safety complex bonds will keep 67 cents per thousand on the tax rate. In FY17, these items will increase to $1.65 per thousand on the tax rate.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak on this? Gentleman in the crowd.
Charlie Konecki, 146 Valley Road. I'm the chairman of the Public Safety Building Committee. We were instructed by the Board of Selectmen some 3 to 4 years ago to move forward with the construction of a public safety complex. We have been working on this for the last 3 to 4 years. We've had many public forums. We've had many town meetings, purchasing land, redoing survey work, so on and so forth. It's reached a point now where we're presenting to the town a proposal to deal with the inadequacies of our police, fire buildings, plus our dispatch and our emergency management. This vote will still need approval at a town meeting. The $10 million
town election.
Town election, I'm sorry. It's getting late.
I'm paying attention.
I'm trying too. You have to appreciate this is the maximum amount of money that can be spent on this project. We are concerned about inflation. We are concerned about interest rates going up. What I'd like to do is have the police and fire chief give a little insight as to what they're dealing with presently and how this would improve their departments.
They're right behind you and they're ready. Chief Workman.
John Workman, Southampton Fire Chief. Three things I know. One is this is a lot of money. The other is that the 150-year-old schoolhouse that was converted into a fire station is not going to get any newer. It's a challenging building to work in. Firefighters are very close to trucks, almost underneath wheels as apparatus leaves. We don't have any exhaust extraction. Our bathroom is in question. And the last thing is that it won't get any cheaper to build this in the future.
Thank you, Chief.
Chief Silvernail. I would start off by inviting anybody in this room and any taxpayer to please stop down the police department or the fire station and see for themselves the deplorable conditions in which we're trying to work out of. And when I say your, I mean all the taxpayers in Southampton, your police department sits in a building that's over 100 years old, where mice run around, where when the wind blows in the winter, the sand from the parking lot comes through the windows, where the lolly column in the garage is rotted out and we're waiting for the old meeting room to collapse on our heads, where the brick on the outside of the building falls out in 3 or 4 foot sections, where the soffits along the top of the building, just underneath the roof, rot and fall off. This building is in deplorable condition. The police department literally is in the basement of the abandoned old town hall building. Please stop by, take a look for yourselves, and I don't believe that there's anybody who can walk into these two buildings and not agree that we need to do something about a public safety complex, and the sooner the better.
Thank you, Chief.
The Finance Committee requested information as to what it would cost to maintain this new facility. Given the fact that we only have preliminary drawings in that, to give you an absolute number would be impossible. But I can tell you that it's costing us about $32,000 a year for the police department and the fire department running those buildings. Those buildings will be mothballed until we move forward with a decision on them. So that should free up $30,000 to $32,000 to operate the new building. Plus, if it's a new building, maintenance should be pretty minimal for the first 5 years because it is a new structure.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Ron Peralt, Glendale Road. $10 million is no small nut. It's a lot of bananas. There's a lot of people in Southampton from my travels, and I'm relatively new here, that are elderly, that are just kind of making it by. You know, we can't ask these people to go to Stop and Shop and get a job bagging groceries to supplement their taxes. So, I mean, I think the time is right to do this public safety complex. But when we're talking about 10 cents here and $1.68 there, that's on a per $1,000 rate. It's not a dime, it's not $1.68, and we're looking to do this for 20 years. Interest rates are low. The buildings are in terrible shape. They need to be replaced. And I think maybe somebody just answered, what are we doing with the old guys? Do they have any monetary value where we could sell them or something? But, you know, as one gentleman said earlier, you know, we got to watch how we're spending these people's money. You know, we're asking for a lot here. And we know what happened last year when we tried to do an override, because there's a silent majority out there that's quite elderly that says, hey, I can't do much more. I'll do my share, but, you know, you're asking too much. So I don't know if there's any other way to raise revenue in Southampton, but we can't just do it on taxpayers. There's got to be another way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peralt.
Jay Ferranti, 10 Karen Drive. I need a little clarification on this motion. In the information that I have, after the figure of $10,800,000, there's a comma, or any other amount, comma.
You may have the article that is the four corners of what the motion
Okay.
can be created. So that's standard language for articles. The motion reads differently as read. So, and then as I discussed earlier. So you're looking
the
at
language is not there then.
You're looking at the articles. Language has been changed.
Okay, I got you. Second point that I'd like to make. I pay a lot of state taxes, and I was wondering if the safety committee here had any offers for a state grant.
That has been brought up at several times, and I've heard the answer to be there are no state grants. Is that what everyone is, Charlie? I want to answer for you, but figured I'd save you a trip up.
For the past 3 years, the committee has been searching to try to find grant funding, state and federal. We haven't come across any. We have spoke directly to our senators and to our reps. Department of Agriculture is willing to give us a loan. Funny, the Department of Agriculture is willing to give us a loan, but that's all we've found.
That answer your question, Mr. Ronti? Thank you. Mrs. Sussman.
Susan Sussman, 9 Golden Circle. Mr. Moderator, I don't think anybody would refute the need for a new safety complex, but I would like more information about, are we sure it's going to be built where we think it's going to be built? Have all the tests been done? Is it going behind where the current fire station is? Have soil tests been done? I mean, is this a go-ahead to build where we have been discussing at town meetings, or is that still something to be decided? It seems like we should figure out where we're putting it and make sure that's a definite before we spend the money to do so.
I know the answer to that, but I'm going to have Charlie answer.
You caught me off guard. I was doing grant negotiations on
Is this the place it needs to be? Have soil tests been done? Are we exactly sure this is the location where the proposed complex is going to be?
We've done all the soil evaluation, permeability testing for the septic system. We've done preliminary sampling of the soils to determine where the ledge and everything else is. Yes, the building's actually going to be located where that white trailer is behind the fire station.
Did that answer your question, Mrs. Sussman? Is that a yes? Thank you. Any other? Yes, sir.
Michael Rosenberg, 144 East Street, member of the Finance Committee. On April 28th, we requested from the Public Safety Complex Committee, along with the Select Board, the cost to operate and maintain the new building, along with the costs associated to operate and maintain the two existing facilities post-construction, because while they will be mothballed, there will be expenses associated with those buildings. So if it costs us $30,000 today to maintain them, what will it cost us in 2017, and what will it cost us to maintain the new facility? The spirit of a feasibility study is to see whether or not a project can be successful. As of right now, recently we've approved appropriations to cover utility bills. There's articles in here in regards to funding for new positions because we can't afford these new positions in the current budget. So for this project to be successful, can it be designed and built the way it is? And, you know, are we going to have financial implications in the future that by, you know, sort of kicking the can down the road and not planning for these, will we be up here again in 2017, 2018, asking for more 2.5 overrides, more debt exclusions to cover some of these costs? We as the board just asked for clarification on the operating and maintenance costs post-construction. What's the cost of that going to be? If the feasibility study does not show that information, then to be honest, thorough vetting wasn't done, because the feasibility study includes those types of financial information, those types of financial projections. There's comparisons to other local public safety buildings. you know, we should be able to have that information in front of us to know whether or not we're voting for a building that costs $30,000 to maintain or $80,000 to maintain. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Guy Prairie from Caitlin Way, 21 Caitlin Way, Southampton. First thing is I've been to the fire station and I have been to the police station, and they are deplorable. Those conditions, there's no question about that. What I'm concerned with is that the wording of the proposition suggests to me that those are estimated costs. And when you're building those kinds of complexes, you can bank on 20 to 30% more than what those estimates are. My experience with building complexes like that is that the money comes from the federal government. Through Homeland Security, there are usually grants available to communities for building these kinds of structures and complexes, and I'm wondering, it's been said he's looked for 3 years for funding sources. What kind of federal money, with the help of the local politicians, have been pursued? And I would question that.
Thank you. Who would like to address the local politician federal grant question?
We have met with both our state senators and our state representatives numerous times about this, looking for state and federal funding. We've gone as far as mass emergency management, discussing with them if there's any funding. We've been on federal sites trying to find funding. The reality is we cannot find any funding for this. But I will entertain the idea that even, you know, if we pass this article tonight, it still goes to town election for a vote. If in the interim, somewhere down the line, we find federal money that's available, we can certainly modify this as we go forward. Be it 10 o'clock, I suggest we move the question.
Anybody have any more comments? Mr. Barton.
Hank Barton, 51 Pomeroy Meadow Road. My understanding is that...
A little louder, Hank, closer. Ice cream on the trail.
My understanding is that the Norris School roof debt and the Hampshire Regional debt are both going to be expiring in the next 2 or 3 years, which would have an effect on the tax rate. Maybe somebody could give us some specific numbers.
Anybody have any numbers? On the debt? I didn't accept the call of the question and asked for a second. That would mean a vote, a 2/3 vote, in order for us to vote. So I thought this would be more expeditious, it being 10 o'clock.
There are the two items. The Norris School roof is the first one. I believe it comes off in 2017, and I believe the approximate current weight of it on the budget is $176,000, give or take. The second one is the Hampshire Regional School roof, which comes off in 2021, and I believe it's $303,000 annually we're paying on that.
Okay, thank you. Answer your question, Mr. Barton? Good. You always seem to get in under the wire.
Aaron Kuchar, 49 Coleman. I don't disagree or agree with the complex. I think we don't have enough information. We have a 10,000 or 10,800,000 you're asking us to vote on, and we don't even have, where's the budget? We asked all the Proposition 2.5s, had to give a detailed budget of where the money was going, and we're being asked to vote on something with not enough information behind it. So that's a bit concerning.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to vote, and this needs 2/3. So all those in favor, sorry, we're going to vote. I announced that we're going to vote. You know you can always get, go ahead, come on. You don't need an invitation. You can just get up there and get at the mic. You don't need to walk fast.
Okay, just a general statement.
Yep.
The situation warrants that the buildings sooner or later will be needed to be replaced. And due to the unrest, we have to look at the global picture of the economy. Due to the instability in the Midwest and in general in Europe, there's a lot of money flowing into the United States because we are still the closest or the safest country to invest. That includes money from Japan, all the sheiks from Middle East, send the money, which drives obviously the interest rates down. If we are deciding to build something, it is now to do it pretty soon, because our government is printing, or the Federal Reserve is printing money, not just by the billions, by the trillions, and sooner or later that will, the piper has to be paid, okay?
Okay.
Which will drive the interest rate out. So essentially, keep it in mind when there's now is the time to make the decision to secure a low interest rate.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to vote. Going to vote regular vote, holding up of cards. If anyone wants to make a motion to vote otherwise, now's your chance. Raise your cards for those in favor of E. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. I asked for a vote. I announced earlier we're not voting to call the question. That would delay things, and that's not my style. So we're voting on E, the motion under E for the safety complex. All those in favor of the safety complex as worded here, raise your cards. Counters.
$36.
36.
22.
22.
37.
Those opposed, please raise your cards.
$27. 29.
27 and 29.
6.
6. $95 ayes, 62 nays. The motion under Article E fails. It being 10 o'clock, near 10 after 10, I will accept a motion to adjourn to tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock. Second? All in favor? Opposed? See you tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock here. Thank you very much. You've been an excellent audience. Great town meeting. Safe home.